Hello and welcome to my channel. And I'm going to introduce you 6 books that I've read in the last 6 months because somewhere along the way I realized that I didn't just want to consume history, I wanted to understand it. And not the made up, glorified, cooked up version that gets passed off in the movies or in speeches, but the messy, layered, and often uncomfortable reality of Indian history. So yeah, I read these books not for marks and not for content, but because I really wanted to dig deeper, especially as someone who is preparing for research and maybe even a PhD in the future. So each of these books helped me challenge what I thought I knew. 3 books are paperbacks and 3 books I bought it from Kindle. So yeah, let's get into it, shall we? So the first book I picked up was The Golden Road by William Dalrymple, and honestly, it completely pulled me in. And if you think Indian history is just about the kings and the battles, this book will change your whole perspective. So it's mostly about how Buddhism, which started right here in India and made its way to East Asia, to places like China, Japan, and Korea, and how it evolved along the way. So Dalrymple doesn't give you just dry facts. He actually shared real stories, travels to old temples, and bring in these beautiful little details that make feel everything alive. Next up is a book by someone I consider one of the sharpest minds in Indian history, Romila Thapar. Our history, their history, and whose history isn't just a book, and it's just a reminder of why history matters now more than ever. I've always been a huge fan of her work, and honestly, I still don't understand the hate she receives from the majoritarian groups. She doesn't distort the past, and she actually defended its integrity. And in doing so, it reminds us that history should be about inquiry and not ideology. So, kudos to this book. Highly recommend it. Here comes the next book, and this is the book that made me fall in love with modern Indian history all over again. From Plasi to Partition by Shekhar Bandyopadhyay. I've actually read it twice now, and I can honestly say it's one of those rare academic books you keep coming back to, and you just not revise it but to rethink. And the first time I picked it up was last year, and long after finishing my masters, ironically, I didn't read it seriously during my postgrad, and like many of us, I kind of coasted through. So this is one of those books that's actually recommended during a master's course in history. Also, it just doesn't list events, it explains why and how behind them, from colonial policies to nationalist movements. So highly recommend it. Now I'm gonna take you through what all books I have read on Kindle. So yeah, let's go. I picked this book because after Aurangzeb, Tipu Sultan is the most talked about historical figure, and sadly for all the wrong reasons. His legacy has been twisted, debated, and deliberately erased by majoritarian narratives. So, anyway, who's actually read history and not WhatsApp forwards knows Tipu wasn't just a king, he was one of the earliest freedom fighters who stood up for the British imperialism with everything he had. This book by Kate Brittlebank is a brilliant starting point. It's just 188 pages long, so you can easily finish it in one sitting. And despite its size, it's packed with insight. She doesn't glorify him blindly, and she gives you a very sharp, well researched account of the man behind the myth. So, yeah, highly recommend this video book. Will be incomplete without Aurangzeb, so possibly one of the most polarizing figures in Indian history. In Bollywood, he's the ultimate villain, ruthless, orthodox, and anti Hindu. But what if all of these versions is more myth than reality? Audrey Truschke's Aurangzeb, the man and the myth, doesn't glorify him, it doesn't whitewash his policies. What it does is offer historical context, something that's sorely missing in public discourse. This book invites you to view Aurangzeb not as a caricature but as deeply complex, often contradictory who employed Hindus at the highest levels of his administration, a military strategist navigating a crumbling empire, and a ruler making decisions shaped by his time and not ours. Truskay's the last book on my list is one I'm still making my way through, Early India by Romila Thapar, and honestly, it's dense, detailed, and absolutely fascinating. There's so much to absorb, from the evolution of political systems and religious ideas to how ancient India interacted with the wider world. So every few pages, I find myself pausing and just to take it all in. This book is also part of my master's program, and though I read it in bits and pieces back then, but I'd highly recommend it to anyone currently doing their postgrad. So yeah, those were the 6 books I read in the past 6 months, and honestly, they changed how I look at Indian history. I'm not done. This is just the start. I want to keep reading, keep on learning, and keep questioning. And if you're on that part too, let's do it together. If this video helped you discover even one new book to pick up, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments what history book changed your perspective. Thank you so much.